Welcome to After the Call, where we answer the questions you have to help you get the most out of your CPI equipment. I'm Brandi Fuller, and joining me again today, I have with me Dave Melvin. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Brandi, how are you doing today?
I am so good. I'm so glad that you are back in that chair. I'm going to call it Dave's chair.
Yeah.
Thank you again for coming and joining me here and talking more about some of the vending questions that we get to our global help desk. Today, Dave, I want to talk about the picker.
Okay.
So can you tell me, what does the picker do? And let's start with that. What does the picker do?
All right. I'm going to assume that you're talking about the part that ejects from the cup.
Yes.
Because a lot of people will call the whole cup assembly a picker.
Oh.
Some will call it a picker cup. Some call it just the cup. And then when it comes to the picker itself, some call it a plunger and some call it a picker.
Okay.
So
I'm talking about the little thing that pokes out and strikes the selection to eject the product into the cup.
All right. So we're on the same page now.
Okay.
So with that being said, that is just one of the internal parts of the cup. Inside the cup, you have the picker, you have a return spring, you have a picker home switch, picker out switch, you have the cam, and that's all on the back side. And if you flip it over, you have a cup board and you have a cup motor.
Okay. Now, I remember, Dave, many moons ago, we did a video on this.
Yep.
That's on our YouTube channel. For those who need the URL, that is at cranepi.com/help center. And we did the whole anatomy of the cup assembly.
How to rebuild.
How to rebuild it, right. Yeah. We did how to rebuild it. So I'll link that in the description so people can go to that for reference.
Yeah. Okay, now with that being said, one of the things that causes people the most pain is the easiest fix. And you hear me say it all the time, clean and slick.
Yeah. There's that Davism.
Yeah, well, inside the cup, there is a very small amount of lubricant.
Okay.
And what that does is to reduce friction from the metal parts to the plastic parts.
Okay.
All right. So with that being said, over a period of time, that lubrication will get dirty or it dries out, and that will cause you an issue. And the number one issue that you'll see is the picker gets stuck out.
And is that because of the lubrication?
Yep. That's the number one issue.
Really?
It is.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So sometimes it's just as simple as taking the cup apart, cleaning all the dirty grease off of it, and adding a small amount of lubricant back in.
Remind me, Dave, what lubricant do we use for that?
We use, it's called LubriPlate is what we use at the factory.
Right, but I know that we were talking about cleaning and lubricating the slides. You said it was a non-alcohol based. Would this also be non-alcohol based?
Yeah, you want to clean it with non-alcohol based.
Okay.
Alcohol will dry the plastic and cause it to premature fail.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one thing. You can just take the cup apart and follow that video. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be.
And then just relubricate it and give it a try. What else? What happens if the picker won't come out at all?
That's usually the times that I have seen that. It can be multiple things that could be the cause, but the thing that I see more often than not is the plunger itself or the picker itself is broken.
Okay.
And then what it does is when it's broken, it actually jams against the cam and won't let it go.
And it won't come out.
So that would be number one.
Okay.
Number two would be a motor.
The picker motor?
The picker motor.
Okay.
And probably the next would probably maybe a connection issue.
Okay.
As if it doesn't eject at all.
Okay. So yeah, I would think, tell me if I'm wrong, Dave, but would one of the first things you do before even maybe taking off the cup, it would probably be pretty easy just to quickly check the connections, right?
Yeah, you could. And so, of course, you want to turn your power off first.
Right.
And at the bottom of the cup, the base of the cup, if you'll look at the very bottom of it, you'll see 2 Phillips screws.
Mm-hmm.
So if you remove those 2 Phillips screws and slightly remove, or very carefully remove that cover, because it does have a cup sensor attached to it, so be very careful. So once you have that off, you'll expose the back side of the motor, and the connection to the board and all of the connections to the board. So with that being said, while you have the power off, you can just remove each one of those connections and plug it back in. And I'm okay with leaving that cover off just for a brief test and power back up and test. Did my problem go away?
Okay.
If it did, then great. Then I turn the power back off, finish putting it back together, and off I go.
Okay.
But if it didn't, then I'm kind of curious what else is going on. So it could. I don't think you're really going to see much from that side.
Okay.
So at that time, I'm going to say, let's turn the power back off, remove the cup assembly from the machine, and take the back side off, because that's where we're going to see, is it a mechanical issue? Is it a dirty grease? Or do we have a broken part?
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it ever a programming issue in this scenario?
The only time that I could relate to say it's a programming issue, if the call is my picker's going too high.
Right.
Okay.
And we've talked about that.
Yeah, and we have.
Right.
And so that would be the only time that I would say a mechanical or a programming.
Okay.
So if it's the older style, it could be the cup home switch.
Okay.
That syrup sticky switch. But if it is a programming issue in shelf offset, if the number is set too high, then the cup goes too high.
Okay. So I have a list here of some common questions that we get to our help desk, and I'm just going to read what some of the notes are and tell me. Okay, so plunger sticks out.
Okay.
So tell me about that.
That's probably a big call.
What do you mean a big call?
I'd say they get a lot of calls at the help desk.
Okay, so what does that tell you if the plunger's sticking out?
So I'll get to the machine. I'm out of service. The cup assembly is stuck somewhere in the middle of the machine. And through troubleshooting, asking questions, we find that the cup assembly is actually stuck, and the plunger / picker is stuck out or jammed against a gate or something like that.
Okay.
And it can't move. So the very first thing that I'm going to ask you to do is just lift up on the cup slightly. Does the plunger return?
Can't go back in, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
If it goes back to its home position inside the cup.
Okay.
If it does, okay, that's one thing. But I'm still going to go into the program. If it's generic, mode button 2 times F*1, and that's position test. Make the power interrupt switch. In most cases, in current models, that's the left door switch. And then I push F as in Frank to send it home.
Okay.
Once I have the cup in the home position, then I use the 0 button to cycle the picker, and I can do that 4 or 5 times. Does it work? Is it every time? Is it going out? Is it coming back in?
So is it striking and it's doing what it's supposed to do?
Well, it's not striking anything in the home position.
Right, but
That's what I want to know. Is it going out and back in, out and back in? And if I do that 4 or 5 times successful, then I'll move it to a selection up in the middle of the machine or the top of the machine or whatnot. And while I have a drinks there, then I'll push 0 and eject the drink, remove the drink, hit 0, eject the drink, and I'll do that ejecting a drink. See if I can make it mess up under pressure, so to speak.
Right.
All right. So I'm trying to duplicate the issue that I found. And it could be something as silly as the power interrupt switch that I mentioned. If that switch goes to neutral position because you don't have your door adjusted correctly, or your machine is unlevel, and which allows the door not to close tightly, then while all of that is moving, if that power interrupt switch goes to neutral, then I lose power. And whatever the cup was doing at that time, it stops. And if it was somewhere and the plunger was stuck out, then I just so happened to lose power with the plunger stuck out.
So, and it's so funny when you bring that up, because I do remember you've talked about that before too, where I think it was in one of your classes. That's one of your tips that you give people is to maybe wiggle that door a little bit and see if there's any give or pull.
What a memory.
Hey, not really, but I was able to come up with it then.
Yeah.
But I do remember that.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of securing that door could remove some of those issues.
Yeah.
So
And sometimes it's the simplest that buffaloes us the worst.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because we always think it's harder than what it probably is.
Yep. Yep.
So that's when the picker is stuck out,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
So I've also seen questions from customers where they make a selection. The picker cup, the entire cup assembly goes up, and the picker strikes, and then the cup just slowly goes home without any product, and it's just
Okay.
it's kind of sad
All right.
to watch it like descend.
uh, 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 okay.
It didn't fulfill its purpose.
All right. So typically, when I see something like that or I hear something like that, my first thought is the picker out switch was not made.
Okay, Dave, I'm sorry. You have to help me. I know this is probably very elementary for some people, but when you say a switch isn't made,
Okay.
that is Dave language that I don't understand.
All
So
right.
what do you mean by it's not made? It wasn't successful?
Right.
Okay.
I didn't see the switch. So a switch, think of your light switch at the house.
Yeah.
So you turn the switch on,
Yeah.
the lights come on.
Right.
Turn the switch off, the lights go off. So that's a switch.
Yes.
So in the cup, it's basically the same thing. So I have a switch that has a lever on it. As the cam rotates, it gets to a wider spot, which makes the switch. It says, "Oh, I see the picker out switch."
It connects with it.
It connects with it.
Okay. I'm just trying to understand your language because it's different. I told you before, you're like my husband. You guys speak a different language, and it's not how I would say it or not my frame of reference. So I have to ask so I don't have a wrong understanding.
Well, I mean, I try to say it in a way that most people, I try to paint a picture.
Yeah.
So it kind of relates.
Right.
So as the cam turns, it makes the picker out switch, which allows the picker to be fully extended.
Mm-hmm.
So as it rotates more, the return spring brings the picker back home.
Okay.
And then the picker home switch is made at the home position, says, "Okay, I'm good."
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
But while it's up there trying to pick a drink, if that picker goes out and that switch is not made, it says, "Wait a second, I've got a problem." So it says, "I can't go any further." So it just kind of slowly goes back home.
Like with its tail between its legs.
Pretty much.
That's what it looks like.
Pretty much.
Okay.
So that we see that as a failed vent.
Okay. And then I think I know the answer, and I think I know what you're going to say, but how do people resolve that? Do they have to take the cup apart?
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, probably. But what I want to know something first.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to use the machine as a tool. All right. So, and we'll stick with its generic program. So mode button 2 times F star and then the number 3,
Mm-hmm.
which is for cup test.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I make the left door switch or my power interrupt switch if it's a single switch. So once I have power, if I push 0, that cycles the picker. And on the screen, I have 4 different things.
Okay.
The first one, it'll say on 0, in 0, then it'll have 0, and then a 0, and then it'll have a HM1.
Okay.
So the very first one, if I hit star, it says on 1.
Okay.
And that's for the cup sensor. And then the next one is in 0, which means the cup sensor does not see anything in the cup. And then the 0 is for the out switch, and it should be 0
Okay.
if the plunger is in the home position. And HM1 means the picker is at the home position and that switch is made.
Okay.
So if I push 0, that third digit 0 should say 1, HM should say 0, and if I could pause it or take a picture of it as it happens, it does it pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
I would see 0, 1, HM 0.
And what does that say to you?
So that means the picker out switch was seen and it was made,
Okay.
and the picker home switch is not, it's open
Okay.
because the picker is away from the home position. Then as the picker comes back home and makes the home switch, HM is 1 and the out switch is 0.
I see. Okay.
So I'm using the machine. Does it see it at all? If I never see that 0 change to a 1, then I'm saying either I've got a bad switch, it's not connected, or I've got a most likely electrical issue on the, like a cup board or a switch.
Okay. Okay. So the zeros means it's not connected. either
or not seen.
or not seen. And either that's supposed to be that way, depending on where it is in the cycle,
Right.
or if it's in the right position and it should be a 1. So a 1 would be like, yes, it's doing everything. So if you have the cup in that right location
Yep.
and you have a 0, that's probably the problem or a problem.
Yeah, it could be.
Okay.
Now, and we've done a video on how to rebuild a cup. We've done videos on how to replace the picker out switch.
Yep.
And so there are things in that video that will kind of give you some guidelines to go by.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm looking for also is on the cup board. Throughout the years, we have used dielectric grease. And the dielectric grease is on the connections on the board, and that's to help prevent moisture condensation causing us a connection issue.
Okay.
And I've seen throughout the years that somebody will put too much dielectric grease, and then that causes a communication glitch, so to speak. Sometimes I see it, sometimes I don't. And by simply turning the power off, removing the cover, and disconnecting the connections to the cup board, plug them back in, and I'll do this 3 or 4 times. And what that does is if it is excessive grease, by doing that 3 or 4 times, by connecting and disconnecting, you will remove the excess and you're good to go. So with that being said, if that is the issue, once I've done all that, I can go back and I can test, and everything works, I'm done.
You're done.
Yep.
Okay. So what if you test, and that still didn't fix it? What's your next thing?
Then I'm going to have to do the old-fashioned way. I'm going to have to get my volt ohm meter.
Okay.
And I'm going to have to check the switch using the meter.
Okay.
And if the switch is good, then I'm down to it's either the cup board or I've got a harness issue from the cup up to the Y board.
Up to the Y board. Okay. Yeah. So, and then remind me, your voltmeter, it should be what, around 120?
If I was checking for voltage, yes, but we're not checking for voltage.
Oh, dang it!
You almost got a gold star.
I did. I was trying so hard.
So, but what I'm looking for is ohms. What I need to make sure that it has resistance. So when the switch is made, if it's the needle, it would go all the way over. But typically, if most people use a digital meter and it goes to 0 or it beeps at you saying, "Oh yeah, we're good."
You're good. Okay. Yeah. All right. I was trying to show off, and that's what I get for trying to show off. Okay, so let's look at some of these other questions here. I will tell you, Dave, I'm looking at this list, and it is too small print. I'm at that age where I have to take a picture of it.
Welcome to the club.
And zoom it in to see. Okay, so some of these other questions are, picker cup delivers empty 2 times. Is the 2 times significant?
That's kind of a loaded question, I guess.
Oh, Lord. Okay. Okay.
So by default, we will, if I don't deliver the first time, I try a second time.
It's not you, right? Like, this is where I feel like I have to like decode for people. You mean the machine is programmed. It's going to try once. And if it's not successful, it's built in to try again.
Yes.
Okay. Because, that would be really cool, Dave, if you could like ride the XY assembly. Like, I wish I was really good at graphics, because, I would try to like put you on that. So what about when the picker cup stops halfway between home and the selection?
That's usually a communication issue.
Okay.
And usually it goes the C tray if it's the classic. If it's a media, it usually goes to the number 3 tray. And it just goes like halfway and then stops and goes back home. Okay. And that's usually a communication issue. Okay. And normally somewhere around the Y board is where I lose the communication at most of the time. Or it could even be a faulty Y board. Okay. But it's usually a communication.
And so would I check the harnesses then?
Yep. Okay. And typically what I would do is power off, remove the Y motor cover, and disconnect all the connections on the Y board. Connect them back in, power up, and try it again. Okay. And sometimes it's a simple fix like that.
Now, you're probably going to laugh at me, but if I disconnect stuff like with my computer, I pick up the connection and I blow in it. I don't know why. I think I probably I don't know. I'm sure other people do the same thing. Like we feel like there's dust or something in there. Does that help? Or no?
It's not going to hurt. How's that?
Okay. It'll make me feel better.
Yes, if
Okay.
it makes you feel better,
It's
that's
like
okay.
this is an official thing that we do is you unplug it and you blow in it. Okay. One other question here that I'm curious about. It says, so this person, I guess they just replaced their, it says the plunger did not fire after being replaced. So let me see, Dave, if it were me, I would first go to, did I replace it correctly? Is there a way to?
Well, I would have a bunch of questions. You know me.
Yep.
I mean, did they replace parts? They rebuild the cup and it didn't work, or they put a brand new cup on?
Picker gets, it says the picker did not fire after being replaced.
Yeah. Like I said, I can take that multiple ways.
Okay, we'll take it the way I'm taking it.
That they replaced the whole cup assembly?
No, they just replaced the plunger.
Okay. They put it back together wrong. It would be my first reaction.
Yeah.
That's actually in a bind. The cam was put on it in the wrong place, and now it's in a bind.
I remember that when we did that video, and I will just share. I mean, I think it's very clear, especially by this episode, that I don't know a whole lot about what you do, Dave Melvin. I do my very best to fake it, but I really am a novice. I don't know. But when we did that video, the instructions were so straight and clear that I was very proud, if you remember, that I did put the whole cup assembly back together by myself.
Yes, you did.
And I did it correctly.
Yes.
And I was so happy. So it's not very intimidating. So the video, I think, does a great job of showing that. But I do remember that the cam, you're very specific about that. And I recall one of your tips was when we do that, before we take it off, is to use a Sharpie and draw a line on it to help us know where to put that cam back.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was a good tip, I thought, Dave.
The center of the lobe is basically facing 2 o'clock.
Okay.
When it's in the home position.
That's what I meant. The center of the lobe is facing 2 o'clock. I meant to say that.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, what else do we need to know about pickers, Dave?
The big thing, Brandi, is if you would make this as part of your preventative maintenance schedule,
yep,
you could save so many service calls.
Okay.
And say, depending on the usage, if it's a high volume, then I would do it every 3 months.
And what would you do specifically?
I would remove the cup, take the back off, clean all of the grease out.
Yep.
And re-lubricate.
Okay.
And if there are any if the cam is wore, I would replace it. But look for damaged parts. But more, it's the cam that wears more than anything.
Yeah.
And if it's wore real bad and it's only been a couple of months, then I would look at the plunger, the picker itself, and the base of it. And I call it a trigger because it looks like a trigger.
Yeah.
But that's what rides on the cam. And if it has a sharp edge or a burr on it, then that will cut into that cam and cause a premature failure.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then get you a file and just kind of smooth that off. But definitely replace the cam.
Okay.
But the grease is number one.
It's yeah. It's just like changing the oil in your car.
Sure.
If you don't do it, you're going to have a problem.
You're going to have a problem.
I did have that one time about 25 years ago. I was young and stupid. And
that was before Jimmy, though.
It was. It was before Jimmy. And I took it to the mechanic and they just basically said, there's nothing we can do. There was no oil in it.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I know. I feel stupid now, but I was a young and dumb kid. Yeah. So yeah, preventative. Is there anything, now we talk about route drivers sometimes, just real quick, is there anything that a route driver might identify or be able to kind of give a heads up that there is a problem?
Probably if they come there and they find that the plunger is stuck out, the pickers, and they just turn the power off and back on and it resets, or they open and close the door, it resets. And if they find it on multiple occasions, that's probably a good indicator that they need to call it in. Just one time, you might bring it up, but is it worth a service call? Because it could be something, a lost power,
sure,
or whatever it may be.
Right.
But
just report it at least, maybe. Just give the heads up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You say the machine's working now, but this is how I found it.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because those route people are going there much more than the service people.
Oh, definitely. Well,
So,
one would hope.
yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
So awesome. Well, thanks again, Dave, for telling me all this great information. I feel kind of stupid sometimes in our calls, but
No.
that's okay. I'm learning as we go. So thank you again for joining me here at After the Call. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in once again. We are so grateful that you listen to our little podcast here. It's a passion here for Dave and I, and we have enjoyed it so much. If you have a question and you want Dave to answer it on one of our episodes, please email us at afterthecall@cranepi.com. You can even include a video or a voice memo, and with your permission, we'll play it here on the episode. Thank you again for tuning in, and make sure you check out future episodes where we answer the questions you have to help you get the most out of your CPI equipment. Until then, I'm Brandi Fuller. Keep your equipment running.